I'm N.S. Venkatraman. I'm speaking on behalf of Nandini Consultancy Center, a firm of chemical engineers and chemical business consultants based in Chennai and Singapore. At present, the price of LPG for domestic use is around rupees 1003 to rupees 1055 per cylinder of capacity 14.2 kilogram. In the case of commercial LPG, the price is rupees 2,355 per cylinder of capacity 19 kilograms. In other words, the domestic price of LPG is around rupees 74 per kilogram, and the commercial LPG, the price is around rupees 124 per kilogram. Now, both these prices are quite high, beyond the capability of the Indian consumer to pay. Obviously, Indian consumers, both domestic consumers as well as industrial consumers, are put to considerable strain. Now, yesterday, understanding the plight of the consumers, the government of India has introduced a new scheme where rupees 200 per cylinder is provided as subsidy to the consumers who comes under what we call as PM Ujwala scheme. That is, it goes to the people who are in the lower income group. It is expected that around 9 crore domestic consumers will be benefited by the subsidy of rupees 200 per cylinder. It's good as far as it goes. Nevertheless, the price of LPG is still very high as far as the Indian consumer is concerned. Now, there is unending argument between the central and the state government as to whether the central government has adequately reduced the price of the LPG, and central government asking state governments to reduce the price of LPG by reducing own taxes. These are all unending arguments based on political scenario and the position in which a particular individual is placed. We are not going to get into argument on this. We are going to examine today only a technical feasibility of reducing the price of LPG, whether it is possible. We are suggesting today that LPG should be blended with dimethyl ether, which is popularly known as DME, which is an eco-friendly fuel. By mixing dimethyl ether with LPG to a level of around 20% of DME with around 80% LPG, there are multiple benefits for the country. Number one, price reduction of LPG, blended LPG with DME is possible. Number two, there are going to be significant environmental benefits. Number three, there are also going to be a lot of safety advantages using DME blended with LPG rather than LPG alone. Now let us look into all the detail with a little more detail. Now let me explain first what is DME, what is its characteristics, and what is the advantage of DME over LPG, and what is the advantage that the LPG blended with DME gets. Now DME, which is otherwise not called a dimethyl ether, it's a colorless gas. Now, one of the very, very important things that makes us tempted to compare LPG with DME is that the properties of dimethyl ether and LPG are almost similar. Not only they are similar, there are distinct advantages of DME over LPG. Now, what is the advantage? Number one, the explosive limit of dimethyl ether is much higher than LPG. Therefore, LPG, when it is blended with DME, the feasibility of safety is enhanced considerably. That is, because LPG has a lower explosion limit, DME has a higher explosion limit. This is a big advantage. So the safety factors are in favor for LPG blended with DME compared to LPG alone. Number two factor is DME is environmentally friendly, much more environmentally friendly than LPG, because dimethyl ether contains oxygen. Because it contains oxygen, dimethyl ether burns fully. No residual liquid is left, residue is left. In the case of the LPG, there's a feasibility of the residue being there, it not being completely burned. Other factor is, when LPG is used, when LPG is burned, there is carbon dioxide emission, there is nitrous oxide emission, which are environmentally harmful gases. In the case of dimethyl ether, there is no such emission. And further, the production cost of dimethyl ether is going to be lower than the production cost of LPG. So when LPG is blended with DME, the weighted average price of blended LPG with DME is going to be lower than the price of LPG. So there are three main advantages. Number one, possibility of having this LPG blended with DME at a price lower than the LPG price. Number two, the environmental benefits. Number two, enhanced safety factors. All the three very major advantages that enable us to think of the feasibility of producing blended DME with the LPG. Now, let us look into this in a little more detailed manner. Apart from these factors, why is the price of LPG so high today? The fact is, LPG is produced from crude oil or natural gas. As far as India is concerned, the production of crude oil is just around 30 million ton per annum. India is importing 220 million ton per annum of crude oil, and the import of crude oil is steadily increasing every year at level of 6 to 7%, because Indian production of crude oil is virtually static. There is no feasibility of significantly increasing the production of crude oil in India in the foreseeable future. Similarly, India produces around 32 billion cubic meter of natural gas, and also around 32 billion cubic meter of the natural gas is also being imported in the form of LNG. Therefore, there is no feasibility of increasing the production of crude oil. Similarly, there is no feasibility of increasing the production of natural gas. So what is going to happen is the import of crude oil and import of natural gas is going to increase at 6 to 7% per year, which will reach an alarming level by the year 2030. Now, already around 27% of Indian foreign exchange earnings goes for the import of crude oil. Now, this percentage of foreign exchange earnings will become much more unsustainable, uncomfortable level when the import of crude oil and natural gas is going to increase to a level of much higher than this by 2030. Now, given this reason, there is a need to curtail the import of crude oil and natural gas, which is possible by blending the LPG with DME, so that the requirement of LPG, that blended LPG DME will be lower. To that extent, import of crude oil and natural gas will be lower. That's number one factor. Number two factor is that is along with this here is, apart from this crude oil and natural gas, what is really happening here is, for import of this natural gas or import of this crude oil, India is in a very unenviable situation, because international price of the crude oil and natural gas is fluctuating. Today, the price of the crude oil is around $110 per barrel. A few weeks back, it touched as much as $130 per barrel. Earlier, before some 6 or 7 months or so, or even earlier before that, the price of crude oil was $70 per barrel. So you don't know what is going to be the price of crude oil now. Before that, later on, nobody is able to guess. So the fluctuating price of crude oil and natural gas is a big threat which destabilizes the economy of several countries, including India, which are largely imported. From this situation, we have to somehow get rid of it. This is possible by reducing the consumption of LPG, which means probably the requirement of crude oil and natural gas will come down marginally. That's another big factor. Now, given all these factors, we are recommending that the country blend LPG with dimethyl ether to the level of 20% of DME and 80% of LPG. Now, let us look into the cost factors and profitability factors. How is dimethyl ether made? Dimethyl ether is made by simply dehydrating methanol. It's a very simple process, well-known process. Number of plants are operating all over the world. Technology licenses are readily available. There's no constraint at all. It's a very simple plant. There's no constraint at all in setting up a dimethyl ether plant in India today. Then, what is the raw material for a dimethyl ether? Is methanol. As I told you, for LPG, requirement is crude oil and natural gas. India does not have enough crude oil and natural gas, so we are in a vulnerable position. Now, in the case of DME, raw material is methanol. Are we in a better position for methanol? No, because India is around now importing 22 lakh tons of methanol per year. Methanol is a very strong building block. So the demand for methanol is going up to level of 78% per year. Now, India is unable to produce methanol to its requirements, mainly because methanol is made from natural gas. India does not have natural gas. When you produce methanol in India from the imported natural gas, the price of methanol in India becomes much higher than the international price of methanol, because methanol is produced by countries like Iran or Trinidad Tobago or some Middle East countries and so on, where natural gas is readily available. When in a country where natural gas is readily available, they produce methanol. A country like India, where natural gas is not there, you have to import the ethanol, but natural gas and then produce methanol. the cost of production of methanol in countries where natural gas is available is much lower than the cost of production of methanol in countries like India, where natural gas is imported. So given this scenario, India is not able to be competitive. Therefore, Indian import of methanol is increasing and is already touching 22 lakh tons per annum. Now, I am recommending the dimethyl ether must be produced on methanol. Then how can I recommend the dimethyl ether should be produced, DME should be produced on methanol when methanol is not adequately available in the country? Here is a situation I need to explain to you. The global production of methanol is right around like 90 million ton per year, 90 million ton per year. The capacity utilization of global methanol industry is just only 65%. This means the supply scenario of methanol or supply capacity for methanol is far higher than the demand for methanol. So there is unlikely to be any supply constraint as far as methanol is concerned in the global market. Now, methanol is largely produced in countries where natural gas is readily available. Therefore, these countries which are producing methanol on a large scale, where natural gas is readily available, they are unlikely to be significantly affected by the international price behavior of natural gas. So, methanol produced from natural gas in countries like Iran or countries like Trinidad, Tobago or Middle East countries, the price is likely to be much more stable than the crude oil or natural gas. So, in the case of methanol international scenario, there is no supply constraint, supply is readily available, there is no supply bottleneck. Price is likely to be largely steady. There is not unlikely to be violent fluctuation in the price of methanol, unlike in the case of crude oil and natural gas. So when setting up a dimethyl ether plant based on methanol, imported methanol, they are unlikely to face a situation of lack of predictability in the availability of raw material, as it is the case of the crude oil and natural gas. So it is much more safer to have imported methanol to produce a DME plant rather than imported natural gas to produce the LPG. That is number one. Number two is, as far as the production cost is concerned, the production right now, what is happening? India is importing LPG in a good way, apart from the domestic production. The import price of LPG today, as on today morning, is around 56 rupees per kilogram. 56 rupees per kilogram, as far as the imported price of LPG today. Now, in the same thing, today's morning price of dimethyl ether in China is just 45 rupees. There's a clear difference of 12 rupees between the price of methanol and the price of LPG. So that is going to continue for all time to come. Price gradient will remain the same because basic raw material for production of LPG is natural gas or crude oil. Basic raw material for production of methanol is natural gas. So if the natural gas is priced to go up or the natural price is priced to come down, then the impact of the LPG will be there, impact of methanol will be there, both will be in the same format. Because of this particular factor, the price difference or cost of production difference between LPG and dimethyl ether will be there at levels of 10 to 12 rupees as far as India is concerned for all time to come. So you find a scenario where you have LPG, where you have DME. The cost of production of DME is much lower than the cost of production of LPG, at least by 10 to 12 rupees per kilogram. So when you are going to blend LPG with DME, higher price LPG, lower price DME, you work out a weighted average price, it is going to be less than the price at which LPG is being sold. So this is a big advantage. So we're going to have a price reduction possibility in the LPG by using the LPG blended with DME. So there's not only the price reduction possibility, there's the environmental advantages, there's the safety provision that is there. These are all very, very good advantages. One more thing which we can do, as far as methanol is concerned, you have the feasibility possibility of importing methanol. The better option is let India go and set up methanol facility in countries where natural gas is adequately available, cheaply available, and low cost available. Such example of those countries are Iran, Middle East countries, Trinidad, Tobago, and so on. Suppose you think you are uncomfortable with the political stability in Iran, or you are uncomfortable with the political stability in Middle East, then go and set up in a place like Trinidad and Tobago, where there is a friendly government. India is much more, probably would be welcomed in Trinidad and Tobago, because they are also looking for investment possibilities in a big way. Set up this methanol plant in Trinidad and Tobago or such countries, produce methanol at low cost, then transport the methanol here. This is not something I suggesting new. Already we are doing this. There are some fertilizer plants being operated in the Middle East countries. There are phosphoric acid plants that are being operated in Middle East countries by Indian entrepreneurs, Indian project promoters. So Indian users of phosphoric acid have facility in some Middle East countries. There they produce the phosphoric acid, take the requirement of phosphoric acid in India. It's a win-win situation for them. So what is happening is the seller of this phosphoric acid in Middle East and the buyer of phosphoric acid in India is the same. Similarly, if you are going to set up a plant in dimethyl ether abroad, set a plant for methanol abroad, the seller of methanol would be the Indian unit, buyer of the methanol would be the Indian unit. So unlikely to be exploited in the market. That's also a feasibility you can just see. So you find it's a win-win situation. So my suggestion is blend LPG with dimethyl ether to a level of 20%. There is no issue on this because same transportation, LPG is similar to DME, same cylinder with which you are supplying LPG, same cylinder you can use for supplying DME LPG. The freight, there is not going to be any difference. Storage facilities are the same. Packaging facilities are the same. Freight cost is not going to be different. There is absolutely no infrastructure changes are required. Then you have the advantage of environmental benefit because DME doesn't emit carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, whereas LPG does. So given this factor, I submit to the government of India, I submit to the entrepreneurs in the country, I submit to the technocrats and all the listeners here, as well as the policy planners, to actively consider the proposal to set up DME plants in India, produce LPG blended with DME, make it available to the country so that consumer will be benefited by the lower cost of LPG blended with DME. Consumer will be benefited because of the environmental factor associated with this. Consumer will be benefited because of the safety factor associated with this. I submit to all the stakeholders to examine the feasibility of this and go forward, move forward, and forth ahead. Thank you very much.